Chapter 1201. The fork in Tatiana's hand dropped onto the table with a thud. She had never imagined that Crystal would do something like this. Crystal wanted to be with Yale. Was she out of her mind? Tatiana's expression turned foul. She even thought that she was hallucinating, and she must have misheard. Unexpectedly, Crystal curved her lips into a faint smile. "Dad, Mom, I've finally realized who has been truly good to me. In the past, I did so many things for a man who didn't deserve my love, but I overlooked the man who truly loved me. I'm not a young child anymore. In the future, I just want to live happily with Yale." Tatiana felt like she was having a heart attack. Taking a deep breath, she drank some water to calm herself down. She was suppressing her urge to end Crystal's life right then and there. When Crystal finished speaking, she noticed her mom's foul expression. The others were eerily silent as well. There was no trace of dissatisfaction on Ethan's face caused by her revenge. When Olivia saw Crystal looking at her, she awkwardly picked up a glass of water and drank it. Linus' expression was dark, and he was frowning deeply. Mason was probably the most indifferent person at the table. Crystal couldn't see any emotions on his face. Mason slowly put down his glass as he looked at Crystal. "Have you seriously thought it through?" There was no trace of sorrow nor joy in his voice. His voice was entirely calm. It was completely different from what Crystal had imagined. Why was her father looking at her as if she was a stranger? Mason's reaction unsettled Crystal. She panicked a little. "Dad, Yale is very good to me. I have seriously thought it through. Please grant us your blessings." At that moment, Yale stood up and took Crystal's hand. "Mr. and Mrs. Heath, you know I've always liked Crystal a lot. I promise that no matter what happens in the future, I'll treat her well." Tatiana could already feel Mason's fury. Not only was he furious, but he was also disappointed in Crystal. That was why he behaved so calmly. Hence, Tatiana hastily tried to make peace. "Crystal, I still think you should carefully consider something as important as marriage. It's okay to date him, but you can't fool around with marriage." Tatiana was showing Crystal a way out of this mess, but the latter remained stubborn. "Mom, I've already considered it as carefully as I can. Yale is a man I can entrust my life to. Linus, back me up. You're the one who wants me to lead a happy life the most, right?" Crystal was putting her hope in Linus. Linus was a reserved man. Even though he couldn't say anything decent, he was aware of Yale's ambitions. Crystal could choose anyone at all, but the only family she must never choose was the Kingston family. "I think Mom's right. You can date him, but you should give it some time before considering marriage." Crystal was immediately upset. "Yale isn't some outsider. You have all watched him grow up, haven't you? You know his family very well, and in terms of background, our families are a good match for each other. Why won't you guys agree?" Tatiana said. "Yale, don't overthink what I'm about to say. It's not that I don't like you, but my daughter is a very straightforward person. She might be up for it today but regret it tomorrow. I'm worried. Marriage isn't a child's play." Yale replied, "I completely understand how you feel, Mrs. Heath. But I've loved Crystal for a long time. I'll be sure to treat her well no matter what. She won't regret it." Crystal decisively dropped the bomb. "Dad, Mom, I'll be honest with you guys. There's a reason why I have to get married to Yale." Mason looked at her. "I'd like to hear why you just have to get married to him." Caressing her flat belly, Crystal said proudly, "Dad, I'm pregnant with Yale's child." Chapter 1202. Mason's gaze was cold as he tightened his grip on the glass cup. Olivia sensed that he was close to exploding, so she immediately patted the back of his hand. "Mr. Heath, please have some more water." At this moment, Mason was even tempted to fling the glass onto Crystal's face. Suppressing the rage in his heart, he forced himself to say calmly, "So you think getting pregnant outside of marriage is something to be proud of? Mr. Heath, you can blame me." Mason threw his glass at Yale's feet. "She's being immature, and now you too, Yale. Or are you two just trying to cause trouble for me? If word of her pregnancy out of wedlock gets out, how will everyone look at our family?" Crystal argued, "Dad, it's about time you changed your old-fashioned mindset. Many women get pregnant out of wedlock and get married while they're pregnant these days. Yale and I are truly in love with each other. Also, haven't you been urging Linus to get married and have kids? I have a child now, and you'll have a grandchild soon. Isn't this good news? Mason sneered. A month ago, you told me you refused to get married to anyone other than Ethan. But now, you're saying that you were sincerely in love with Yale. Your sincerity couldn't have been any cheaper. Crystal said, I was stupid in the past to have fallen for someone I shouldn't. How are you so sure that you're not stupid now? Crystal couldn't say anything to counter Mason's words. So, she could only place her hope on Tatiana. Mom, help me out here. It's not a bad thing that I got pregnant. Why is Dad so mad about it? Tatiana wasn't taking Crystal's side today. With a cold look, she said, I think you're seriously out of your mind. You are aware of your father's status as well as your own. If word of this gets out, do you think your dad would be proud of it? Crystal stuck out her tongue. I'm not like those commoners. No media will dare to spread rumors about me. Seeing Crystal's defiant attitude, Tatiana felt her blood pressure rise from the rage. It was a surprise indeed. Tatiana was so surprised that she couldn't even say a word. Even now, Crystal still failed to realize the severity of the situation. Tatiana thought that Crystal was truly well behaved now, but unbeknownst to her, Crystal had done something stupid instead. What do you want me to say? To wish you a happy marriage. Tatiana was exasperated. Mom, don't you wish for my happiness at all? It's not that I don't want you to be happy, but marriage isn't as simple as eating or sleeping. If you rush into marriage without any preparations, you'll suffer in the end. As someone who had gone through the ordeal, Tatiana patiently gave Crystal advice. But of course, Crystal wouldn't hear a word of it. She said innocently, Yale loves me so much. He won't be like that heartless man. I'm sure he'll treat me well. Ethan didn't say a word, but somehow, he'd gotten involved in the conversation. Looking at her daughter's innocent expression, Tatiana shook her head helplessly. Marriage wasn't as simple as Crystal imagined. Mason spoke up again. All right, then. Young people these days like flash marriages, right? We old people can't stop you. I wish you a happy marriage ahead of time. Dad, you agreed for real. Crystal's eyes lit up. Agree. You two are in love with each other, right? Why wouldn't I agree? Mason smiled as he spoke. Dad, I'll be sure to treat Crystal well in the future. Don't worry, Yale hastily said. Mason raised his hand. Please don't call me, Dad. Single quote. Dad, what do you mean? Haven't you already agreed to the marriage? Crystal looked at Mason, confused. That night, I made myself very clear. I have disowned you, so you're no longer my daughter. You can get married to whoever you want. With that, he looked at Yale. Since you truly love her, I'm sure you won't mind her status, right? Chapter 1203. Yale was stunned, but he quickly returned to his senses. That cunning Mason had struck the heart of the problem. Yale refused to believe that Mason would truly disown his daughter. Mason must be testing him. Of course. I love Crystal as a person, not her status. Crystal said angrily, Dad, what do you mean by this? Didn't you say those words out of anger, and you didn't mean them at all? You're my biological father. How could you abandon me? Mason sneered. Do you think I'm as childish as you are? Why would I say things like that out of anger? All these years, you have been doing whatever you like just because of your status. So what happens now that you've lost that status? Crystal's expression stiffened. Dad, haven't you cooled off? If not, why would you ask me to come back for dinner? I called you back here to announce one thing. It was also to erase you from our family tree. Crystal's body swayed. Dad, you must be joking. Why would I joke about such things with you? Mason's expression was cold, and he looked at her like she was just a stranger. Crystal shook Tatiana's arm. It was only at that moment that she felt true fear. Mom, speak up for me. If Crystal hadn't gotten pregnant, Tatiana would, of course, take Crystal's side. But now, Tatiana was also devastated that Crystal had done something so shameless. She felt embarrassed to learn that the daughter she had raised as her own had turned into such an immoral woman. I have nothing to say. Linus. Crystal hastily went up to Linus and shook his arm. Help me coax Dad. She had quite a large frame, so she accidentally bumped into Olivia. When their gazes met, Crystal vented all her anger on Olivia. Raising her hand, she struck Olivia's face. It's you. It's all because of you. You wench. Linus grabbed her hand. Haven't you had enough of fooling around? Me? Fool around? Don't you all feel that something's off? Ever since she came here, she has turned our family upside down. Enough. Even now, you're still trying to blame someone else when it's your fault. Linus pushed her hand away. Then, he looked worriedly at Olivia. Are you okay, Liv? I'm fine. Don't worry. Crystal took a few steps backward. She couldn't believe that her brother, who used to pamper her, would treat her like that. He focused all his love and attention on Olivia instead. Linus, are you guys out of your mind? Did this woman charm you or something? I am your biological sister. She's just an outsider. Why are you so nice to her? An outsider? Mason snorted. Who said that she's an outsider? Tatiana looked at Mason. She suddenly realized something. Didn't Mason just say that he was about to announce something? She thought of the changes in the home these days, and she realized that they were all related to Olivia. Could it be? Gripping her clothes tightly, Tatiana looked at Mason. Mason, what are you announcing? Does it have something to do with Miss Fordham? Her. What does she have to do with our family? Getting up, Mason waved Olivia over. Child, come here. Olivia obediently walked over to him. Taking her hand, Mason said gently, we have verified that Olivia is related to me by blood. She is not an outsider. She's my bona fide granddaughter. Crystal's face turned pale. Dad, what did you just say? Chapter 1204. Early on, Tatiana had already guessed that something was off. When Mason revealed the answer, she felt her heart tremble violently. Tatiana said through shivering lips, what's going on, Mason? Mason explained, a long time ago, I told you I was in a relationship before we got together. I didn't betray you. The child existed before I met you. Liv is the granddaughter I had with her. Dad, how can she be your granddaughter? Crystal shook her head continuously, refusing to acknowledge it. But Mason just smiled coldly. I had a DNA test with Liv in private, and it confirmed our blood relationship. She'll be a part of the Heath family in the future. As for you, Mason's tone turned heavy. I've already said that you're no longer my daughter. You're on your own now. Only then did Crystal realize that an earth-shaking change had occurred in the Heath family. However, she was kept in the dark and knew nothing about it. Now, she only had one card left. It was the child in her belly. Dad, I'm pregnant. Look, this is the pregnancy test report. How can you drive me out? Yale is a responsible man, so I'm sure he'll take responsibility until the end. Moreover, isn't this the marriage you want? Just marry him and live the life you've always wanted. Yale could barely keep his calm. After all, he had sacrificed a lot for this day. He thought he would finally win against Ethan for once, but unexpectedly, things had turned out like this. How could Olivia be Mason's biological granddaughter? Wasn't she the daughter of the bankrupt Fordham family? Yale was furious, but it was exactly at times like this he had to keep calm. Reaching out, he held Crystal back. Crystal, you're pregnant. Calm down. Calm down. How can I calm down? How can a wench like Olivia be worthy of? Raising his hand, Mason slapped Crystal across the face. Shut up. What right do you have to insult her? You're nothing without the Heath family. Get lost. I don't want to see you ever again. Crystal's eyes were red as she retorted, fine. Remember, you drove me out today. Don't even think about asking me to come back in the future. With that, she left in a rage. Yale cursed her stupidity, but he pretended to be considerate and said, Mr. and Mrs. Heath, I'll be taking my leave now. It's cold outside, and the roads are slippery. I worry that Crystal might be in danger. Crystal, wait for me. Tatiana got up to go after Crystal. They were just going to have a meal, so how did it turn out like this? If you dare follow, you're leaving the Heath family with her. Mason was truly furious today. He wouldn't mind his precious daughter getting tricked once, but now, she had even gotten pregnant. It was too much. Tatiana paused in her tracks. Lifting his fork, Mason said with a dark expression, "Sit down." Tatiana had no choice but to sit down obediently. She put a smile on her face as she looked at Olivia. "Come on, Mason, why didn't you tell me earlier about your connection to Miss Fordham? It happened decades ago, and you didn't even know me then." Quote, "Do you think I'd still blame you for that? Well, Liv, there had been some misunderstandings between us, but please don't take Crystal's words to heart. Mason didn't tell me, so I didn't manage to prepare a meeting gift for you." Tatiana looked at a middle-aged maid at the side. "Lisa, go to my jewelry box and bring me that pair of azure bracelets." Lisa Walker had been serving Tatiana before Tatiana even got married. She had served Tatiana for decades and had always been a woman of few words. She was competent, and Tatiana trusted her very much. "Understood, Mrs. Heath." Mason looked at Olivia and Ethan gently. "Ignore her. The food tonight is quite delicious. Feel free to have more." Chapter 1205. Ethan got to watch the drama unfold for free. He guessed that Yale would be immensely pissed off. His plans were foiled once again. So, he ate happily. He even went for seconds. The members of the Heath family had stern looks on their faces. The worst had come to pass, so Mason didn't even have the mood to eat anymore. Olivia put some food on his plate, shaking her head as she said, "Grandpa, please take care of yourself." Mason let out a long sigh. How could he have such a terrible daughter? He couldn't understand at all. He and Tatiana were both smart people, so who did Crystal take after? Even though they didn't call off the meal, Crystal had ruined the good mood, so dinner ended quickly. Mason told Olivia, "You don't need to massage my feet tonight. I have some things to discuss with your grandma." Both Olivia and Tatiana felt speechless when they heard that. Tatiana was only in her 50s, but she had become a grandmother for some reason. "All right, just please don't get mad, Grandpa." No one had expected Crystal to get pregnant. They had no idea what tactics Yale had used just to marry her. He had crossed the line this time. Linus followed Mason as well. Ethan was elated. "I'll send you back, Liv." The lights were dim in the corridor outside. Under the streetlights, the white snow drifted like feathers. The scenery was beautiful. Reaching up, Ethan touched the back of Olivia's hand. Olivia glared at him. "What?" He decisively put her hand into the pocket of his coat. Olivia wanted to protest, but his large hand gripped hers tightly. "Liv, remember when we had just fallen in love?" A scene appeared in Olivia's mind. Back then, Ethan had just returned from overseas, and the first thing he did was to show up at her school. "Come down. I'm outside your dorm." Olivia looked down from the balcony to see the man leaning against his car. He was looking up at her. Like a joyful bird, she rushed downstairs and threw herself into his arms. The gates closed at 10 p.m., so he could only accompany her for a walk around the school field. She was in so much of a rush to go out that she only wore thin clothing. Ethan took off his coat and wrapped it around her. The coat was warm, and it even had his scent. They embraced each other under the streetlights of that snowy night. Love is always wonderful when you're a student. It doesn't have anything else mixed in. Ethan held Olivia's hand tightly. "Liv, we can go back to that time." Something hard was dropped into her palm. Olivia looked at it. It was the other ring. Ethan got down on one knee. Under the heavy snow, he said, "Liv, I love you, and this has never changed. Please give me another chance to love you." He looked up at her. From his angle, Olivia looked like a goddess to him. The streetlights cast a faint golden glow over her, outlining the shape of her body. Her face hadn't changed too much. The only difference was she had lost her childish air 10 years ago. Not only had she matured, but she was also even more radiant. He was hopelessly in love with her. Snowflakes gently drifted down around them. Olivia quietly looked down at him. She would be excited and touched in the past. But now, those emotions were gone. "Let's not." She stuffed the ring back into his hand. "If you fool around like that, it'll be pointless." With that, Olivia ignored Ethan. She turned and left. The young woman 10 years ago who would throw herself into his arms without hesitation, had died in the heavy snow that day. Chapter 1206. Once back in her room, Olivia smiled bitterly. She thought to herself, if Ethan had known that this was going to happen, why did he do what he did back then? Now, she still didn't have the resolve to prepare for a marriage, even if it was with her ex-husband. Ethan stood in the snow for a long time. It covered his whole body. Finally, he let out a long sigh. He then turned around and left. He would bear the consequences of his actions. In the study, Mason's expression was cold as Tatiana stood next to him. She tried to persuade him. She made herself clear first. Mason, I swear I didn't know about this. Don't look at me like that. She kept saying that she had a surprise for me. I sincerely thought she had repented, but who knew it would turn out like this? Linus was also exasperated. She has gone too far this time. We all know that she hates Yale, so that was how Yale managed to sneak in. I have no idea how she got pregnant in such a short time, and with Yale's child too. Tatiana said, indeed, that time, I watched as she took the pill, so she couldn't possibly have gotten pregnant. Mason, what do we do now? Mason snorted. What else? I've already said it before. She's your precious daughter, after all. Are you truly so cruel that you would disown her? She has chosen that path herself. No one forced her to do it, so how am I supposed to teach her? Even animals would learn their lesson after a few times, but her. Yale managed to trick her with just a few words. She has lived such a pampered life since she was a child, it's about time she experienced some hardship. Mason's decision was resolute. That's settled, then. She is no longer my daughter from now on. I'm warning you too, don't do anything meaningless. Got it, Dad? Tatiana hastily stopped Linus. Linus, she's your biological sister. Can you truly abandon her? Mom, Yale isn't a decent man. He's too ambitious. As soon as he becomes a son-in-law of the Heath family, he can benefit plenty from his position. Countries are built on individual families, so I completely agree with Dad. Crystal is too stubborn. We've already advised her many times, but she refuses to listen. Tatiana slumped on the chair. She wanted to say something, but she couldn't speak a word. All right, you can leave now. I'll just pretend I never had a daughter. Linus, don't go yet. I have something to discuss with you. In a daze, Tatiana left and closed the door on her way out. She had just gotten out when Lisa went up to her. Mrs. Heath, what did Mr. Heath say? Please stop asking, Lisa. Tatiana almost lost her balance. Lisa hastily supported her. Careful, Tatiana sighed. If she wasn't pregnant, she might still have a chance. She's dug her own grave. Miss Heath is a little too playful, but she's just a child. He can just punish her. Is he truly going to disown her? She has always been single-minded. You've watched her grow up too. Do you think she'll obediently get rid of the child and draw the line between her and Yale? She had finally jumped out of the frying pan called Ethan, but now, she's thrown herself into the fire. Ah, I'm so mad at her. Lisa helped Tatiana to her room and then poured her a glass of water. Mrs. Heath, please calm down. Perhaps in a few days, Miss Heath will think things through and realize that you are the ones who truly care about her. You have to persuade Mr. Heath so he doesn't actually abandon her. She is his child, so she should be closer to him than some granddaughter. Tatiana slammed the glass on the table. It's all Olivia's fault. That wench. If she never came to our home, all this wouldn't have happened. Look how much Mr. Heath dotes on her. She has just returned to the family, but he's already pampering her too. No end. And now, he has even driven Miss Heath out. In the future, will he give her Miss Heath's portion of the inheritance as well? Chapter 1207. Tatiana was already mad enough before Lisa said that. She suddenly stood, slamming her palm on the table. She's not worthy. Who does she think she is? She's nothing but a lowly bastard. You're right, Mrs. Heath. No one knows who her parents are even now, so what is she but a bastard? Miss Heath lost favor all because of her. If it weren't for her, Mr. Heath would have allowed Miss Heath to return by now. Tatiana looked at Lisa's face, asking fiercely, why are you suddenly so invested in this matter? Lisa hastily got on her knees. Mrs. Heath, I have served you since you were young. Back then, I lost my child to an accident, and I've more or less raised Miss Heath as my own. She's practically a daughter to me, so I am also heartbroken that she was driven out of the Heath family. Reaching out, Tatiana lifted her face and looked at the scar on her right cheek. Lisa lowered her head and slapped herself. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have said so much. Get up, Tatiana said coldly. This matter has nothing to do with you. You're right. Olivia's arrival is the reason why my daughter was mistreated like this. I won't let her off the hook. Mrs. Heath, I'll ask around on Miss Heath's end to see if she can get rid of the child and break up with Yale. All right, you brought her up, so she'll listen to you. Tatiana put a hand to her head, looking quite exhausted. She had suffered a lot these days thanks to Crystal. Let me massage your head, Mrs. Heath. All right. Tatiana didn't feel like sleeping at all. Crystal's matter wasn't the only thing that saddened her tonight. Now, she was most worried about Olivia. When she got to know Mason, she knew his heart belonged to another. That was why she stopped at nothing to get married to him. He had confessed his love history to her before they got married. He told her that he was once deeply in love with another woman. That was during the war. He became separated from that woman and didn't manage to find her even after so many years of searching. Tatiana said that she didn't mind. Explosions were going off everywhere back then, so how could that woman have survived? In the few years after their marriage, she was worried that that woman might show up, but fortunately, it never happened. Still, she thought Mason would fall for her as time passed. After all these years, she still failed to win his heart. She assumed that this would just go on until they died. But now, Olivia had shown up, and they discovered that Mason had a child with that woman. What if that woman herself appeared someday? Back then, Mason had to depend on the Benson family. But now, the Benson family depended on him and his status. Don't overthink it, Mrs. Heath. Even if that woman appears, she should be in her 70s now. She can't compare to you. Thanks to Lisa's reminder, Tatiana smiled. You're right. Even if she's still alive, she's just an old woman with silver hair. How can she compare to me? She might even have died a long time ago. People from that era usually don't live long. Tatiana put a hand to her head. To be honest, I'm curious what that woman looks like. Mason has been thinking of her all his life, after all. Mr. Heath's eyes were bulging when he looked at that vixen. She must look a lot like her grandmother. Tatiana snorted. If she truly has a face like that, it's no wonder she managed to seduce Mason for life. Well, all men are like that. They find it hard to forget their first love and the women they couldn't attain. It's just how things are. Let's hope that's how it is. Tatiana closed her eyes. She had a feeling that one day, she would meet the love rival she had never met before. Chapter 1208. After the ruckus caused by Crystal, the entire Heath residence was gloomy. Olivia took the chance to go out for some air. Last night, she parted ways with Ethan on bad terms. So, she didn't go to him right away. Ethan insisted on marrying her, but she didn't want to be burdened with chains again. So this time, she came out to check how her plans were turning out. Warren would send her messages every day, but she wasn't very interested in replying. She had become much colder toward Warren these days. She bought some supplements and visited Jenna. When Jenna saw Olivia arrive, she was quite welcoming toward her. Child, you're finally here. Look, do you see any obvious changes on my face? Her scar was still there, but the edges had blurred out a lot compared to before. It was a visible change. Smiling, Olivia said, yes, you did get better. Here are some supplements I bought for you. When I checked on you last time, I noticed your body is slightly weak, so you need some nourishment. You're too kind. Although Jenna didn't want to accept it initially, she immediately accepted it when she heard it would improve her health. To Jenna, Olivia wasn't any different from a miraculous doctor. She enthusiastically took Olivia's hand, saying, thank you so much. Please, do stay for a meal today. You're a doctor, so you should know plenty about skincare, right? Olivia replied, I do know a thing or two. Jenna hastily pulled her into the house. Then, she gave Miranda a look. Go and purchase some good wine and dishes to serve Miss Fordham with. Understood. Miranda secretly contacted Warren. When Warren heard that Olivia was here, he drove over right away. Olivia noticed everything they did. However, she pretended not to know as she chatted with Jenna. It just so happens that I'm going to check in on a friend today, so I brought some needles along. If you don't mind, Aunt Jenna, I can perform acupuncture on you. It'll help with your health a little. Oh, no, I don't mind at all. I'll be very glad if you can do that. All right, Aunt Jenna, please lie on the bed. I'll start right now. When Warren barged in through the door, he spotted Olivia right away. He didn't realize it, but his entire being was filled with thoughts of her after they parted ways last time. He arrived hastily, and he seemed to have rushed all the way here. Olivia could see that he was still trying to catch his breath. He was probably worried that she would escape again. Olivia had just brought out the needles, and she seemed a little startled when he showed up. Why are you here? It was only then that Warren calmed his breaths. I came over to visit my mom. When I bumped into Miranda downstairs, she told me that you visited. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? Lowering her head, Olivia said, I'm just here to visit Aunt Jenna. What about me? Warren's voice was hoarse. Why didn't you reply to my messages? Get lost and stop getting in the way here. There can't be so many reasons. I'm sure she just hates you, Jenna said in annoyance. Olivia smiled awkwardly. I'm performing acupuncture on Aunt Jenna. Assured that Olivia wouldn't run away, Warren finally calmed down. We'll talk later. I'll wait for you outside. Reaching up, Olivia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Her smile was gentle and elegant. All right. Warren was stunned right then and there. He lost himself in that smile. Like a stringed puppet, he left and closed the door in confusion. Jenna remarked, ignore that silly son of mine. He has never had a girlfriend, so he doesn't know how to talk to women. Olivia didn't continue that conversation. Aunt Jenna, take off your shirt. Chapter 1209. Warren was a little restless as he smoked cigarette after cigarette outside. Ever since that night Olivia left him those words, he had lost sleep every night. When he realized he might love Olivia, he was startled as well. He knew very well that Olivia was the least likely person he could fall for. He was the reason she gave birth prematurely, and he was also the murderer who killed Mona. He should stay far away from her, but he couldn't control his heart. After Olivia ignored him, he felt like a tiny paw was clawing at his insides. He constantly thought about her. He looked forward to their next meeting. He anxiously waited outside for Olivia. When the acupuncture was complete, Jenna's excited voice could be heard from within. I feel much better now. Child, are you secretly a miraculous doctor? Olivia smiled gently. No, I'm not that amazing. I just know a little bit about medicine. When Warren opened the door, he saw Olivia putting away the needles. He could see the elegant and gentle smile on her profile. She was stunningly beautiful. Jenna had just put on her shirt. Looking slightly displeased, she said, look how anxious my son is. Miss Fordham, why don't you talk to him a little? When Olivia picked up her medicine kit, Jenna and Warren were both nervous. What's the matter? Are you leaving? I came over today to check on the effects of the medicine. Also, when I gave you a checkup last time, I noticed that you had some health problems, so I performed a quick acupuncture on you. Now that the treatment is complete, I should leave. Jenna said, I've already asked Miranda to buy some food. Why don't you leave after the meal? Aunt Jenna, I have other matters to attend to. Other people are waiting for me to perform acupuncture on them, too. I'll be leaving now. Warren's gaze darkened. I'll see you off. All right. In the elevator, Olivia stood upright while Warren seemed a little troubled. The two silently walked out of the elevator. I drove here myself, so you don't have to see me off. You should head up and keep Aunt Jenna company instead. Seeing that Olivia was about to leave again, Warren grew so anxious that he gripped her wrist. Wait, I have something to tell you. Suppressing the urge to snap his bones, Olivia mustered a bewildered expression as she looked at him. What's the matter? I've thought about the things you said before. Can we be together? There was silence. Warren's heart raced. Unlike the fake acts he had put on in the past, this was his first time sincerely confessing his feelings. Miss Fordham, I fell in love with you. Olivia stared at his flustered eyes. She only felt amused. Mona had treasured this man so much, but he had succumbed so soon. He was easier to deal with than Olivia thought. She wondered if Mona regretted getting killed by a man like this. Olivia didn't reply, so Warren felt even more nervous. You. Olivia broke free from his grasp. She looked sorrowful as if she was about to tear up anytime soon. Warren, we can't be together. Is it because of that man? A cold look appeared in Warren's eyes. If Ethan was the reason, he would stop at nothing to kill him, even if that was quite a challenge to achieve. Olivia shook her head. I don't have anything to do with him anymore. I've had children, and I've gone through a divorce before. I don't mind. Licking his lips, Warren blurted out, I know we can't be together, but I can't stop myself from wanting you. Miss Fordham, I'm serious about you. I don't mind your past. Can you be with me? Chapter 1210. Olivia pretended to be conflicted as she pushed him away. Please let me think about it. She got into the car, but Warren gripped the car door, refusing to let her leave. Don't go, please. I have my concerns. If I knew that you'd be here, I wouldn't have come over today. I can't think straight right now. Can you let go and let me think about it for now? You have to stop ignoring my messages. All right. It was only then that Warren let go of the car door. Before stepping on the gas pedal, Olivia even put on a hesitant look. She looked like she was about to cry. The best way to deal with people like Warren was to leave them hanging. She would let him think about it on his own, and he would constantly debunk and rebuild his theories. He would be conflicted, but she had to seem even more conflicted than him. In the next phase, he would think of her as a tragic person. He wouldn't be able to break free from his feelings of pity toward her. Then, she could carry out her new plan. Her best tactic was to affect his mind. Today, she had to perform acupuncture for Marina. To carry out the next treatment plan, she asked Marina to get an X-ray at the hospital and go through some checkups. Olivia put on her mask in the car before hurrying to the hospital. She had just entered the lobby when a pale figure fainted in front of her. Fortunately, Olivia reacted quickly. She supported the person in time so the person wouldn't fall. When she wrapped her arm around the person's waist, she felt that this woman was quite skinny. Her waist was extremely slender. Had this woman lost too much weight because of extreme beauty standards? If not, then she probably had a severe illness. After all, Olivia was also very skinny back when she had chemo. A normal person didn't have to lose as much weight as celebrities did just to make themselves look smaller on screen. As the woman leaned in Olivia's arms, Olivia pushed the woman's strands of hair away. She saw the woman's pale skin and thin neck, and she could see every vein under the woman's skin. What a frail person. That was Olivia's first thought. Just when Olivia was about to examine the woman's body, the woman opened her eyes and looked at Olivia. Olivia caught sight of a pair of clear and innocent eyes. Olivia was startled to see that this woman looked a little like her. But she quickly calmed down. She knew there would be those who looked exactly like her in the world, let alone resemble her. So, she didn't mind it. Are you okay, miss? I'm fine. I didn't have breakfast before getting a blood test this morning. For some reason, I suddenly felt dizzy, and my vision blacked out just now. It's good that you helped me, or I wouldn't know what would happen. After listening to the woman's explanation, Olivia said, You probably have low blood sugar. You'll be fine if you eat something. I'll support you so you can stand for a bit before leaving. But when she saw the woman's overly pale and weak body, she secretly placed her hand on the woman's pulse. Thank you. The woman seemed friendly as she thanked Olivia. Just then, a middle-aged woman hastily ran out with a test report. She looked anxious. Miss, I couldn't find you anywhere. You gave me quite a fright. When she noticed Olivia glancing at the report in her hands, she subconsciously held it closer to stop Olivia from peeking. Sorry, Florence. The smell inside was a little too much for me, so I wanted to come out to wait for you. I almost fainted just now, but this lady fortunately helped me up. Oh, you're already in ill health, so you shouldn't run around recklessly in the future. If you tripped and fell, what if? The woman called Florence glanced at Olivia. Then, she stopped halfway through her sentence. Thank you very much. Olivia retracted her hands. No problem. Her body is very weak, and she has low blood sugar. Do remember to eat breakfast. Molly wanted to say something else, but Florence dragged her away. Olivia watched as Molly left. Judging by her pulse, Olivia could see that the woman had been pregnant for a month or so. She must have come for a checkup today, and she had her blood drawn on an empty stomach, so she almost fainted. Still, there was something odd about that woman's body.